Okay, welcome back to Senate Economic Development, Housing and General Affairs. It's still the 31st of March, and we have Senator Thomas Chittenden in front of us.
So this is a different version?
It's a slightly different version. This is Thomas's amendment to our housing bill, our home bill, S100. So Thomas, take it away, it is yours.
I wanted to start by thanking More Time for offering more time. I was here last Friday, and the amendment I had last Friday was different than what you're seeing before you today. That was draft 1.1. And with feedback from what you all were doing and what you have done with the Senate Natural Resources, this has added two key things, which I think makes this just make a lot of sense, which it is intended to synchronize with your 3-year sunset on the 25/5/5 for some of the exemptions that are applied to the village centers and so on. So this is the same contours that it would extend or increase the threshold to trigger Act 250 from 10 to 25, but only for 3 years, and very importantly, only for our communities in Vermont that have permanent planning and zoning, which is what we talked about last Friday. So this 3-year period is, I think, important to highlight because that gives us a window of time to see if this 10-unit threshold truly is artificially constraining housing growth. I just forwarded the chair, Senator Ram Hinsdale, this email, but this sort of attests to what I've seen firsthand in a variety of contours. I didn't solicit this email. This is one of many I've received in support of looking at this issue more. And I want to applaud this committee again. Your original bill addressing this is so important, and I just really appreciate all the testimony that you took and heard from people, so I doubt this is much of a surprise to you. But I did just share this with Senate Natural Resources. That's just an example from on the ground, one of many examples that I hear from people who build houses. The people who we want to be building houses in Vermont are artificially constraining the amount of units they bring online because of this 10-unit threshold. And if I want to rise to the moment of the crisis of housing, and I see this opportunity, what you all did in your original bill, put in this amendment for just the communities that have in place the tools ready to guide that planning, that housing in the areas that they've already determined they want to have housing, to rather than just 9 units, which I would honestly argue is sprawl, it could instead be 15 or 22 units, which would be not sprawl, it'd be higher density, better land use. I did see the letter that the Vermont Natural Resources Council did send to all senators. And that might be on some of your minds. I would just strongly argue that this 9-unit threshold, this 10-unit cap, which drives 9-unit subdivisions, is creating sprawl. I can show it to you firsthand how it is, like this person attests to here, and as you can see in the areas of around Chittenden County, around the city of Burlington, where developers and people with owned land are bringing online just 9 units. They're not doing any more because they want to avoid the costs associated to Act 250 and the uncertainty and the risk. I've just received, since my testimony this morning in Senate Natural Resources, information that usually when you get to that 10-point trigger, it automatically adds $75,000 in cost. That's an estimate. I'm sure that's not news to all of you. You took a lot of testimony on this issue, but that $75,000 cost of Act 250 also brings a great deal of uncertainty. It brings in of the appeals process and other things for areas that 9 houses can go there, but if you add 10, then all of a sudden it's a lot more difficult. So I love that you proposed it originally. The other piece of information I wanted to just put into the conversation on this, the 3-year time horizon that you all have agreed to makes so much sense. And that's why I also wanted to add it here. You all know this, but in state statute, all of our municipalities with permanent planning and zoning have available to them a very important tool that I can attest to its efficacy from my firsthand experience with 8 years on the South Burlington City Council. In state statute is what's called interim bylaws. You can put in place to practically overnight, from municipal government speak, a rule that then requires all development that would possibly occur for a 3-year period, 2 years to start with a 1-year extension, to go through the select board. So if this amendment were to go through, and if there was a community, which I have yet to hear from, the Vermont League of Cities and Towns is portending that they are hearing unanimous support. I'd love for them to speak for themselves, but I've yet to hear somebody concerned with this from the community, from the town level. They would be able to freeze development for 3 years, which is effectively the timeline of this. So this would allow for an experiment, but with the tools already in place, not touched in this amendment, any community that you might be concerned might not be ready for 24 units, whereas they are currently ready for 9 units in certain areas, could enact interim zoning overnight. And then that would actually allow for them to develop the rules or just deny any 24, 17, or 15 units of housing, which would be surprising to me based on the outcry of support. The last thing I'll say, and I just want to thank you again for all your time. I'm here because of what I heard when this provision was taken out of your bill. I heard loud and clear from the Vermont League of Cities and Towns and people that know how to build houses, all the mayors that I know personally have texted and emailed strong support for adding this provision back, because they trust and know that this provision that you all had in your original bill would immediately drive more housing in Vermont. And I guess I just want to reiterate one other point that just in case it doesn't ring a bell from last Friday, and you all know this because you dove deep into this topic, over the next 3 years, there are going to be 9-unit subdivisions. With this amendment, those 9-unit subdivisions might be 14 units. They might be 17 units. They might be 24 units, but they would very likely be more units than they currently are, better using our limited land while still honoring, respecting, and obeying all of our natural resource protections. So I think I'm preaching to the choir. I understand where you all came to on this. I just hope you see the merit of this amendment. I'm going to bring it forward this afternoon, and I think it's important too, honestly, because a lot of people don't know about this 1055 thing. And so if anything, this might raise some more attention to how it is applying some unnecessary regulatory constraints on our housing market to address our housing needs. Thank you for the time. I'd love to take any questions or anything.
Right. Anne, did you have a question? No. Okay. Keisha?
Did Anne say she had a question? I don't want to.
No, she doesn't.
Oh, okay. Well, so Senator Chittenden, obviously much appreciated. And I think I've said this before, but flattery goes a long way. We did have this large discussion. I read the email that you sent from the person in Richmond, and I think I'm familiar with Huntington Homes. I, don't want to disparage them. I generally know they do great work. When we've had developers in the witness chair, it's easier for us to ask them, how much does the average home sell for? And are you seeing this housing go to workforce, and families, or are you seeing some of these go to second homeowners? We've had developers say, once this all penciled out for us at the price we had to sell, we have sold some of these projects to people who we haven't seen for most of the year. So, I just want to ask if you sort of dug deeper with some of the folks that you're hearing from or that you're forwarding emails from about how they're trying to maintain that balance. And I think, obviously, as we're sensitive to where natural resources landed on this, we'd love to know their vote if you have it. And also just recognize that a 25-unit project does end up penciling out entirely differently than a 9-unit project. There could be a difference between no project at all in a major viewscape that would have neighbors really angry, or a farm field, versus if we're going to do 24 units, then we can have that fight, So I don't think for us, it's just a question of, are they going to add 5 more units, which we totally appreciate and get, and we want to understand that situation better. But it could be that a whole new project of 25 units, starts to look much more appealing to somebody, like you said, if they're not facing the same hurdles and costs.
If I may.
Yeah,
It
absolutely.
makes the economies of scale work, is what I've heard. So it's a make or break. From going to 9 units, then the costs of the overhead of the planning and the engineering gets put onto 9 units. But if that same amount could easily be done for 14 or 15 units, that reduces the cost of new housing, which is an argument I've seen. Whereas if you go to that 10, Act 250 adds a whole lot more of time and uncertainty, and time has a true real cost. The other thing I'd love to say to you, Senator Ron Hinsdale, your bill, this amendment that you had in your original bill, coupled with your duplexing by right and quadruplexing, makes so much sense. This would allow those 9-unit subdevelopments that are going to occur. Maybe there'll be some townhomes. Maybe there'll be 4 units. They will build the housing that our nurses, that our teachers, that our farmers, that our trades, that everybody needs. And so I really love your bill. I'm glad to have supported it yesterday. I look forward to voting for it again today. I just want to make the bill a little bit better to get it back to where you all were, and that's why I'm offering this amendment.
Do you have a vote count from natural resources?
I don't.
Okay.
I had to leave because my daughter was on the floor of the house, and I had to get a photo with the speaker.
Randy's intern has a vote.
Yeah, I was
Oh.
there. So,
But just introduce yourself for the record.
I'm Peregrine Ibarra. I'm Senator Brock's intern, they all voted not favorable.
Some would expect it.
Right. Well, I think part of our committee process here in the State House, as you know, is to support the work of the committees and to support the compromises that we make to make progress on behalf of Vermonters. And this was a compromise that was tough for both sides. I think Natural Resources went quite a ways that made, as you know, 2 members of that committee so uncomfortable they voted against it, which is tough. And we have the same in this committee, enough discomfort that we have. It's been a compromise on both sides. And so, as you know, this bill is at its halfway point. It goes to the House. And I think that many of us on this committee feel we have to support the work of this compromise. As you know, I originally proposed this to my committee, who did not support it at the time. So it is something that perhaps if it comes back from the House with this in it, we will discuss it further, but I think it would need more constraints for me to support it at this point. And I feel very much that I need to support the committee process here.
I would just add, though, that in terms of the committee process of reaching a compromise, some of us on this committee were not involved in the compromise. The compromise was presented to us. We were not part of it, nor did we vote on it. So I do not feel obligated at all to support compromise that I was not a part of to begin with.
Yeah, and I just want to recognize that I hear that, and that's why we lost 2 people on the natural resources side too. You know, it just it really came down to learning what it looks like to share this jurisdiction before we go further. And I really think Senator Kitchell said it best. This makes huge gains, and it doesn't give us everything we want. We lost some people from natural resources. I'll reiterate again, Vermont Futures Project says 49% of Vermonters want to see the economy grow and housing grow. 38% say they don't, 12% are unsure. That's about where the Senate is. It seems like, it's just this sort of stuck place that we have to get unstuck from. And what I would hate to see is that we have some of these small but visible projects carve into hillsides or go into some really beloved farm field somewhere, and then people don't want to talk about housing again for the next couple of years because they are passing something on the road that they really blame us for. And so, I think taking the approach of starting with our designated areas and seeing what it does to lower these barriers is a really great way to start for next year, for a really short timeline to revisit.
And our designated report comes back to us soon. And I think it helps.
It might be helpful for some of us who haven't been here to explain what our designated report is.
We have the commissioner of the Department of Housing and Community Development here. I know that we have in this committee discussed in the past the patchwork of what have grown up as different designations to solve different problems. And what we're looking at, what this work is looking at, and Josh will explain it, is looking at all the designated programs and seeing how we can streamline them and make them less of a patchwork. No matter how colorful that quilt is, it's still a bit of a mess. So we are looking at streamlining it. Josh, you want to add anything?
Sure, Josh Hanford, Commissioner of Housing and Development. All these designations get approved or denied through what's called the Downtown Development Board. I'm chair of that board. All these designations have to get renewed, come before that board. We've developed 5 designation programs over the last 25 years. And so a report that hasn't started yet, the money was just available in July. And with the massive backlog of money going out, we're just soliciting RFPs now. So we're hoping to get someone on board and sign contract, hopefully by the summer, to deliver what we know next year. That report is supposed to look at all these designations and give us some advice, because I think what's lost in this conversation is there's only one designation designed for housing, which is the neighborhood development area. The rest of them are designed for your commercial and civic goals,
Which has, as we know, a lot of housing. So So that work is going on and that work will get delivered to us. And I think what I was going to say originally is that I think this helps shine a light on our designations and how important they are, because if they mean that you get green lighted and and our work is not yet finished on this the designations. If it means that you get green lighted on a bunch of things, which it already does in some part, we handed out something yesterday on everybody's desks that shows what's available and what's possible in designated areas. This adds value to our designations and really drives the smart growth that we're hoping for long-term. It may not all be perfect at the moment. But I think unless there are other questions, yeah, Wendy.
Don't we have an Act 50 study coming up too?
Yes, we do. We have an NRB study coming up, and I would hope that some of this conversation, and maybe some of our work in the next couple of weeks would add to the
For
work. that we're
those of us, what is that study?
That did not originate in this committee, but I believe there is, the Natural Resources Board is taking the work of the Act 250 Commission, which was a long process, and the work of the legislature in the last couple of years, and reviewing it and proposing changes to this body next year, I believe. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. I think that's right. And proposing changes that we will be considering.
Okay.
Is that right? Somebody, I think that's the time frame. I think we get it. I think it's due at the end of November or something, and then we get it to act on in January.
Okay, so my couple of concerns about this amendment. A process concern, not process for process sake, but I think it's rash. We had talked about this. Initially, I actually thought it was a good idea. But the more I learned about Act 250, which I've actually done an Act 250 application. I've been the applicant. I've also reviewed them as part of a project review committee on the Regional Planning Council. So I've been on that side, and I've been with towns that are very small, towns that are large. So I don't think South Burlington is the best example of how easily you can change your bylaws. I actually advocated for the state to help towns update their bylaws, and that when the state mandates change to state bylaws, that it somehow pay for that and make the process quicker, because it's
And
not,
we heard you.
right. We didn't do it, but that's okay. So sometimes it takes a little while. So I think this bill, the way it's amended, is a rational, logical, really good step forward. And I'm a little sad that the good things that are in the bill are we're not talking about those as much, because there really is a lot of opportunity. And what I heard from most of the folks who are frustrated with Act 250 is two things. It's the appeals and the uncertainty, which is to developers, time is as valuable. Time is money. And actually it's all of us, but really developers notice it. The appeals and the just that Act 250 has become a catch-all for development review. So and permits, especially permits like stormwater permits. They can be very frustrating. They take a lot of money. So that $70,000 number, I don't think we should just throw things out like that, because there are people who will think, gosh, if there's no Act 250, I don't have to pay $70,000. There are costs to development. And I think we need a good, solid conversation about what Act 250 is and what it isn't. Because my guess is that definitely a majority of what a developer of a development of a certain size, say, like 15, 20 units, has to deal with is permitting that they're not going to get away from. And I think the Act 250 does add value. Obviously, it adds value, and we shouldn't dismiss it in such a large area of the state so easily and so quickly. I mean, this is something the House could look at. This is something I'd love to look at next year. I actually want to look at the 5 and 5.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced that is doing what it's supposed to
Yeah.
do. And to my mind, if a developer is doing a good job in one place, why not let them do a good job in another place? You know, because we're essentially saying that you can't do development. And as long as we control the development in a quality way, then I see that as a benefit. I mean, I would like folks, especially once you stand up the company, I mean, there's a lot of cost that goes into that. So I see the 5 and 5 as a hurdle. We haven't even talked about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what I'm saying is this amendment could be seen as oh, now we've solved it and take our eye off the ball. And I also think it's going to have unintended consequences. And I think we've done a lot already in S100, a lot of really good things that we should be promoting and make sure they make it through the other body. That's my.
If I could just say a couple of things really quickly.
Yeah, because then we're gonna move on because we have 2 more.
I'm not disagreeing with anything you really said. What I would just argue, and I hope that I made clear, that the 75,000 true or false is a perception that's out there. And if I
Totally.
propagated it, that's not my intention. I think we do need to address that. And that's partly why I'm glad we're having this conversation. So maybe this will raise more awareness about these things. And a lot of people don't understand the 10-5-5. I would just highlight what I hopefully stressed last time. I don't see Act 250 as a penalty. I see it as a behavior modifier. It is just modifying market behaviors to just stay underneath that threshold, to not build additional units, even though they might otherwise. And so I love that you originally approached this, because I see this, if it's a behavior modifier, maybe we could tweak it just to drive the behavior, maybe a few more units. The last thing I'd say is if 25, I can't get an answer on why 10 was picked in the first place 50 years ago. I like 25 to achieve the economies of scale, but if there's like another number just to try something out, I'm all ears. But I agree, your bill is amazing, and I hope I've said that. This is the first thing. I supported it. I support everything that's in it. And I'm just saying, bringing this back to conversation because of the advocacy that I've heard, and because I agree that it's a useful thing to spend time on. Thank you.
And we appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I think 10 was probably a compromise, like the other things that we do in this building to
I
make
think it
progress.
got done just like the waiting numbers.
Yes, exactly. Anyway, Thomas, thank you. We have 2 more. I don't know.
Do you
where
wanna-
Ellen and,
Thanks for your time.
Chris
Thank
are.
you. Appreciate it.
I think we ought to have a vote on the
When are
amendment.
they coming?
Yeah. Aren't we going to?
I hope so.
I don't
Okay.
know.
So I think clerk is ready to call the roll. We have
So,
to-
and it's up to the committee. What I was going to discuss is a substitute amendment that looks at this issue specifically, since I think it raised a lot of questions for us. Is it the 25? Is it the 5? Is it the other 5? What can the NRB do to really help us
Would
with
you
that?
like to present that now, Chair Rom?
Yeah,
Hinsdale?
but I still understand if Randy wants to vote on both separately, but it might as well be a coupled discussion and then we can decide.
Yeah,
the vote.
yeah.
So
Please, let's-
before we take the vote, why don't you present your amendment?
Sure, and I imagine you have it all on your desks. I'm just.
We
opening
have it
up
in
my-
front of us.
Okay,
It
great.
is it's draft 1.2 S100, and it says Rom, Hinsdale, Clarkson, and Harrison at the moment.
Right. So perhaps the beauty of this, Senator Cummings, is it outlines the actual one of the 2 reports that we're supposed to be getting back. And it has the existing language, that it builds on this, what's the next 50 years of Act 250 look like, and actually asks us to put it into a recommendation and statutory framework that's existing and coming back to us in the fall. And, if you look, a lot of it has been about, frankly, what the Natural Resources Committee wants. They want to know if the fees are sufficient, if it's functioning well generally, but probably with an eye toward protecting natural resources. And again, we're trying to make sure that we share our jurisdiction in this area and get a report back that's useful to us as well, to understand the housing side of the experience. And so, because this has become one of the bigger lightning rods for, discussion and deeper understanding. And I mean, I just want to agree with Senator Harrison. If we go into these conversations not having the same level of knowledge of Act 250, not having looked at it every single year the same way the Natural Resources Committees have, I think we're at a disadvantage to, fully understand what our contribution is as we look to share this jurisdiction further. And this asks us to really look at that particular issue as it relates to small but meaningful and impactful and visible projects around the state that could go up to 25 units, potentially in the places that have zoning and subdivision bylaws, but also, potentially in another realm, potentially looking at, is it the 25? Is it the 5? Is it the 5? And I think
Is
it's incumbent upon us to know more before we
Uh,
go that far.
As a question.
I know it's a question, but I would like to address the question that was brought up by Senator Kitchell and in the chairs meeting the other day, and that was of the housing proposals that go to Act 250 with all their local planning and zoning intact. How many, if any, of those proposals does Act 250 make a significant change? Because if they don't make a significant change, then the argument that it's duplicative has more value. But that's a number I don't know. We can't count a negative, how many don't go, but how many do go and what happens to them?
I think the only hard data we have, from my perspective, is the housing inventory given to us by our affordable housing partners. And a lot of those projects are what, they consider to be priority housing projects that are already looked at for growth centers and, designated areas where they are saying, we wanted to do a 150 unit project and now it's 75. We wanted to get more affordable housing in this. So that's, in my mind, the only hard data we have is around the PHPs and where our jurisdiction is squarely, I think on target to say, you want more affordable housing? This is what our affordable housing partners are saying. They can't build in dense transportation oriented corridors.
Okay, we have two housing crises, I've finally decided, and we keep talking. A, affordable for whom? And B, we are going a long way to solving the affordable homeless crisis. Okay, we're setting that up. When you say mixed use, 20% of them are subsidized units. That means that you can't charge the rent to pay the cost of developing them.
But we subsidize it for.
Yeah,
In
we
some
subsidize
capacity.
it. And we've got multi-unit housing. But we have another crisis, which is the young professionals that our healthcare system is going down and our education system is going down if we can't house them. So I think it is valuable information because everybody has an opinion about, you can't count the ones that only did 9 instead of 10, but you can count the ones that went. And if the only ones that are going are subsidized affordable projects, then we should know that. And if other kinds of housing development go and don't have any significant change, we should know that too. That's all data that should be part of the discussion.
And it's all data that I assume the NRB board has some of.
Well, then could we
We-
ask them to get it to us?
Yeah, can we have a really big discussion on Act 250 that would answer that question and answer other questions and just learn all about how it works now?
So
I mean, obviously, we don't have time to do that now.
We don't have
but
time.
Can we please schedule that?
Absolutely, and we are going to definitely have that big time next year because we're going to launch a major discussion based on the NRB report that they will bring back to us. This proposal in front of us adds to that NRB study, and it asks us to look at, Keisha, do you want, it asks us to do, it has new language on page 2, which adds to the study. And I'm just going to read it. It asks whether increasing jurisdictional thresholds for housing developments to 25 units under the appropriate statute would affect housing affordability, especially for primary home ownership, and what the potential impact for increasing those thresholds to 25 units would have on natural and community resources addressed addressed under existing Act 250 criteria. And I would argue, to go to your point, there is nothing here that says that these 25 homes would be at a price tag that could be a starter home. We have invested in Missing Middle. We have invested in our revolving home loan fund, which enables exactly that population. We are working hard to make a whole range of housing options available for a range of incomes. The only people who are pretty much not covered are wealthier Vermonters and seasonal residents. As far as I can tell, our
They
bill
will-
covers
they will
opportunities
take
for
care of
everybody else.
themselves.
And they will take care of themselves.
And if we put
So-
everybody in downtowns, they will still have their McMansion on the hill.
And where does everyone, and quite honestly, in my neck of the woods, very wealthy people are wanting to sell those huge estates and come and live downtown where they can walk as older people and have all their services and everything available. The movies, town meeting, shopping, all available close by.
I mean,
And
I
so
kind of, yeah, I think to that point, I kind of think of the people have reached out to me, I don't know about you, about the Southern Vermont University project that is pretty far from amenities and transportation. And, you know, those campuses, I think a lot of us would love to see those become affordable housing or senior housing or just a livable little community. That's going to be a luxury hotel because it's just far from everything, you know, so we don't know what pushing these projects does to the outside.
But it's those kinds of places, and in downtown White River, that are being bought and renovated into housing.
No, the city just bought the Elks Club, which is outside the growth area, outside of public transportation, not easily walkable to downtown.
Right.
And now we're talking about putting housing there.
Got it. Got it.
It's not, but we have other sections closer to town where we have not put any housing.
Right. And
But I'm saying, I think as we go forward, looking at Act 250, we need to know what kind of housing projects go there. Are the only ones with a large number of units, low-income subsidized housing? And what happens, do they make any major changes to a project that has been through planning and zoning at the local level? Because then we know what do we need to beef up if there's a problem at the local level? Or what could we exempt without having any noticeable impact?
Yeah,
And
that's a
we
great
don't have
question.
that.
yeah,
I'm-
Wendy, and then I think we need to.
Well, I have a
decide
couple
on this.
things specifically on the amendment. Madam
Yeah.
Chair.
Yeah, I'm looking to Ellen too, if you want to include her in the conversation, because some of this might be in the report that has,
Presented it, I read it.
Yeah, and, okay.
oh, she did, okay.
Well, can I just,
Efficiency.
Yeah.
Efficiency.
so does Ellen want to come over here and I can ask my questions?
Yeah,
in the meantime?
come on and
Um,
join us, Ellen. I'm
so-
sorry.
So Keisha, the stuff that's not underlined, is that in the report?
That's already. in the
Already there?
report. Yeah.
So this part about B1, transition to a system jurisdiction based on location, which shall encourage development in designated areas. Is it possible, and this now I'm violating my own don't be rash, but this is a report, to see if location could be municipality so that this could be a way to do the designation that we've talked about.
What I don't want to do is mess with existing like chunks that came from natural resources and
All right.
like I think we could add our own lines, but like we're already
Okay.
in a difficult
well,
dance with
I think
them.
we're adding the key
I
piece.
would be interested in finding a way to give towns the authority to administer Act 250. And that, I hope maybe that's somewhere else in the report. And then just one other thing, please.
Yeah, no, I just want to tag
Okay.
onto your thought, which is, I think after this conversation, we should be inviting Sabina in and Pete to talk about where they are with the report and how we could add,
Yeah.
you know,
Right.
to talk about
Yeah.
what we might be able to add at this point.
Right.
So,
And I will
okay.
say, if I could just say too, some of these communities that have really tried to develop, you know, housing where they think it should be, have really used the neighborhood growth area. So, I don't
Yep.
want to dismiss that the designated areas, if they're expanded or work better, which we've done a lot in this committee, looked at how do you reduce the framework around agricultural soils or things within a growth area. If we look at those growth areas and expand them, I think that's what a lot of communities want to use to build a ring of housing around their
Right.
One
Wait a minute.
designated neighborhood in my county and one growth area.
I think the
That's not
point of
gonna
this is
get-
to do more.
That's why we're doing studies.
Yeah.
on it.
You had a second
So,
point.
so the second thing, and if this is a no, totally understand, but what if we're looking at increasing the jurisdictional thresholds with 25 units, could we look at the 5 and 5? Could we add
Yes.
that, or would
Yeah.
we maybe- okay. Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to mess in that section, and then when Chris comes in, we can say we tweaked our own little paragraph.
And anyone who wants to be added to this is welcome. This was just to get it drafted.
Okay,
So, 25 units and we just,
and that 5 within,
So
Ellen might say that
is
it's
that-
captured.
Wait,
Ellen
so-
is here.
I found phrasing this tricky.
okay.
So that's why the cross reference is there to the specific language in 3A4. Because I was having a hard time phrasing how you would you say the review the years and miles, or how would you phrase that?
Let me think about it for a
The
second.
whole kabang is,
So
I
I
think,
added the citation to review the whole
shebang, which is what you did.
piece of language, but if you would like to include any other specific elements of it, I think that's fine. I just was grammatically,
Right.
Okay.
there were already a lot of
So
words.
it-
Give me like a minute to figure it out and talk
So
among
I think
yourselves.
by including the whole shebang, it is reviewing the entire
Yeah,
10-5-5.
I just think it would be nice if it were clear.
I have a question.
Oh, I see what you're saying, because it's the 10-5-5, and that's not even.
That's in,
Right.
that's enlisted
In
there.
all of these studies that have been done before or in process, we are talking about putting all our growth in designated areas. Have we got, and yesterday you used the term 30 to 40,000 units we need.
That's what VHFA has
Okay.
said. I know in the Upper
So,
Valley,
no,
we've
no, no,
identified.
I just want to know, has anyone, or are we looking at, is there enough space, given the tightest density we have zoned possible, to put 30 or 40,000 units of housing in our designated areas? And once you do that, have we done any planning for helping towns with the impact on town services? For, on what, is there any planning about access to jobs, closeness to jobs, public transportation?
I think the
Until until we know we can actually have room to put the housing there, then
Right.
this is all fantasy.
I think the short answer to the second part is how we started to try and plan that and build for that is yes. There are chunks of our bill that try to talk about how the regional planning commissions can help us determine where this housing makes the most sense. We're not going to build it all in the kingdom. If all of the jobs are in Chittenden County, we're going to build what's needed where it's needed. So we're asking to get more granular with the number. I also just want to make sure we remember, and Allison has the little chart, but that number also includes bringing the 20% of our housing that's blighted or not up to code back onto the market. It includes the municipal water and sewer and the designated areas right now. I don't disagree with you that we're going to need to think longer and harder about this, but we're just getting the right data to do that. So this can
Right.
again be a long-term conversation.
I think almost more than any of us that this is ongoing work. And I think that once we set what our goals are, our communities will rise to it. Also, once our communities, and they're already working on this right now and wanting to, with all the ARPA money and the infrastructure money that's available to them, many of them are trying very hard to make their downtowns and village centers and DAs
I'm not
more
arguing
able,
any of
more
that.
fully able
All
to do
I
all these
want to know is, do we know how much housing it is possible to put in the designated areas that we are saying it should go in? And why aren't there the designated area I know of is the low income and senior citizens housing we're building at the mall. That is
That's your NDA?
that's the one I can locate, yeah. Why aren't towns doing designated areas if they are such great
Well,
things?
we're making them better with
Yeah,
this bill.
and we're adding
so we'll
value to them.
Incentivize them.
I think,
They haven't been focused on housing and they've been
Right.
somewhat.
Right, we have
Yeah,
but even
right.
that, we are not rushing to put in designated neighborhoods.
no, but I'm rushing
Well,
for Woodstock to become,
they will
to apply for an
after this.
NDA. I mean, I think NDAs, you're gonna see it drive to NDAs. And of course, our designation work is going on, but
We know.
I think more and more people will be applying for the enhanced village centers and for the
But is
NDAs.
the enhanced village centers where
You could,
employees live with an easy drive or
Yeah,
public
exactly.
access to their jobs?
right, exactly. That is what we're
It's
hoping.
a 45-minute drive from the village of Marshfield to downtown Montpelier, and half of them are going to
We agree.
Chittenden County.
It suits all our policy goals to have people have shorter drives and
Yes.
affordable
And we are not-
starter homes where they work. That is all of these different pieces, transportation, housing, all of it is trying to fulfill those goals and objectives.
And remember, we put planning goals. There's 2 sections about planning, regional
Yeah.
planning and town planning.
And our bylaw.
State
mod-
planning would be really helpful too.
State planning would be very helpful.
Yeah.
Oh, that goes to, I think, one of our chair's big concerns is our lack of having as I recall.
That
There is a bill coming from the House this year that's similar to the one we tried last year. Yes.
I would propose that your substitute amendment, I think, is good unless Wendy wants to.
I can't think of, I mean, I understand what you're saying and if it can be understood that we're gonna look at the 5.5.
Yeah,
That's part of.
that's what we
that's
mean
part of
by the
3A.
reference. Sure.
Okay. Please.
So, Madam Chair, we have now heard your amendment. Your amendment is to take this issue and add it to the NRB. My suggestion is we also have Sabina come in and Pete and really talk about where that study is and how we could be adding to it. Just talking about it.
Informally.
And having, and-
Yeah.
and they don't need, they can look at a lot more things than what's just in statute.
Right.
So I think particularly if we show our interest in wanting to press them hard on all the things that they're looking at, I think that would be a helpful conversation for us as we are clearly sharing this jurisdiction and this space in economic development. We need to understand it more fully.
Absolutely.
So I think with your presentation, what order would you like to take these votes in? We also have a third amendment, which Ellen is in the chair for, and I'd love to, just given while we're listening to amendments, I'd like to hear your technical amendment to the amendment we passed yesterday.
Sure. So the Gray amendment is 2 words. It is fixing a typo I made. And so it's not making a substantive change, but it's adding, and I don't know if you have it, it's just one sentence.
We do have it.
Yeah,
It
but
is.
I'd like to
bottom of
write
the
it
file
in the
somewhere.
bill, what it actually is.
Sure, so it's on page 8 of the SNRE amendment.
Okay, so
so
it's in
it's-
the amendment. So that
Yeah,
would
and
be-
so it's
Somewhere in the
changing-
file.
Somewhere, yes.
So you'll recall that the Senate Natural Resources Amendment had that language about jurisdictional opinions being needed for.
Right, JOs.
For which areas are exempt. So
Yes.
this is adding, just inserting the cross-reference to the 3rd sunset language, which is the enhanced village center sunset. And so that was the original intent, that all 3 pieces of sunset language were included. I missed one of the cross-references.
Got it.
So
you're-
you'll put another one of the.
Yes, right there.
Okay, are you?
Yes, we have
Okay.
it.
Yeah.
We all have it.
All right, sorry.
We all have it. Scott is so
We just can't pass it off as a Scrivener's error, right?
right.
Well, better
Right.
to catch it now.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Just like my exceptions and exemptions. John wouldn't let me do that as a Scrivener's error.
Okay, so which one is that?
So I would,
That's
this is
a
a,
relatively easy one to me.
this is a technical
Yeah,
amendment
this is-
and I would do a straw poll on accepting, I would
Are we doing
accept the
this?
motion to accept the technical amendment, that Ellen is, and that Chris Bray is proposing for our bill as it has been amended already.
So moved.
Okay,
Move.
Okay, all those in favor?
Right.
Aye.
Hi.
Okay,
so that's a yes on everybody?
yeah,
Okay.
thank you, Ellen, for catching
Thank you.
it. So it's always
A lot
frustrating
of
to catch your
moving
own.
paper in the last few days, so I appreciate your patience.
Thank you again, Ellen, for
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah, thanks.
There's
So,
been a lot of moving paper.
yeah, there have, and even, yeah, a lot of moving everything.
Okay.
So, Madam Chair, do you have a preference for the order in which you would like to take up these two amendments?
I mean, I'd leave it up to others if they feel, strongly about one direction or another. I think probably best to start with the substitute amendment because that's the order we go in on the floor. And then,
Right, it is.
but
The
I
order
wanna,
we would go in before, I would have thought would have been Chittenan's first.
if we offer a substitute amendment, you vote on that first.
Okay, you vote on the substitute amendment first. Great. And as we are not, is there anyone else who'd like to have their name on this amendment? This is just to get this going.
So that would be you or you.
Would you
right?
like to be on this?
No,
Okay. Okay.
I have trouble with compromise amendments that some of the committee aren't in on the compromise.
I didn't even see it until now, so, but
Would you
but I
like to be
do
on it?
agree with it.
No,
Okay.
no.
Would you
No,
like
I
to?
mean, for
Okay.
aware of compromise, where you
No, no,
have an
I hear,
amendment
I
that's
hear.
being prepared by a majority of the committee on which you sit, and you've never seen the amendment or heard anything about it, that's a concern.
I didn't see it until now. But
I
it's-
honestly
it's-
was
it's-
here
it's-
in the hospital by the time this was done. It was really just a request to Ellen to sort of add this to the study. So it's really formal. It wasn't a intentional
This was not.
backdoor maneuver.
Okay, so I think that means there would be no changes to the amendment as it is. We would need to get it up to John. So I would entertain a motion for,
I need to make that motion. I move, we approve the substitute amendment. Just to identify it, what draft?
draft
1.2?
1.2,
Okay,
okay? To,
as written,
okay.
with the understanding that it's gonna include the 5 and 5.
It
If that
includes
doesn't
the
mess
whole
things
round.
up, can I say that?
You can say it on
Okay.
the floor.
All right.
That would be helpful.
All right,
Great. So would you be kind enough to have the clerk call?
oh, yes, I am the clerk. Senator Brock,
No.
Senator Clarkson.
Yes.
Senator Cummings.
Yes.
Senator Harrison is a yes. Senator Rom Hinsdale.
Yes.
Okay, so it's 4-1.
Great. And that, then we move to the Chittenden amendment, or is it substituted?
I don't know.
I think we still need to vote on the Chittenden amendment.
Sure. Yeah, I don't want to take that opportunity away from people. We don't have to report that until if and until the substitute amendment fails.
Right.
Okay,
But however, we should have a vote in our back pocket. So I would entertain a motion on draft 4.1 of the Chittenden amendment.
I always think for clarity's sake to just vote favorable so people know what yes and no means and then
So
see.
I would entertain a positively phrased motion.
well, that would be,
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
yeah. I mean, someone who supports it should,
Right.
yeah,
So
I'll make a motion, we accept the Chittenden amendment.
okay. Oh, sorry. Senator Brock,
Yes.
Senator Clarkson,
no,
Senator Cummings,
No, with explanation.
Okay,
Senator Harrison is a no. Senator Ron Hinsdale,
No,
okay.
do you do an explanation here?
Yes, I have an
Okay,
explanation.
do you want me to write it down?
No. This has been the hardest thing I have done in the legislature. It has actually challenged my belief in democracy. Because we have a crisis and democracy does not respond well to a crisis. I'm going to vote against this, and I've talked to Senator Chittenden about it, because I think we are, in democracy's very slow and very plodding ability moving forward. But I think we are living in a fantasy world if we think anything we are doing is going to solve the housing crisis. And it may take some of us hitting the hospital and finding out the nurse or the doctor that's treating us hasn't slept in 48 hours. Because that's where we're at. We passed the child care bill, but we are not going to be able to recruit teachers. They can get housing, nice single-family housing in other states. And if they can't get it here, that's the third leg on the stool. We got childcare, family leave, but you've got to have housing. And in 10 years, maybe we'll catch up with today's demand, or maybe the demand will go away. This has been very difficult. And I think we've made progress. We've made progress in having talks, but we are not going to be able to solve this crisis. We don't even know if it's possible to build the housing in the area that, anywhere near what we need in the areas that we've designated. And the designations, if designated neighborhoods are so great, and I don't want a whole lot of high density housing, I just don't have a designated neighborhood in my town. I don't see this as solving the problem.
I would add, and I agree with much of what you have said, and as I look at this, I see us involved in paralysis by analysis. The house is on fire and we're arguing about whether the fire truck should go at 30 miles an hour or 35 miles an hour. And we will keep doing it over and over and on, and we're not solving the crisis. We don't even have the information to solve the crisis.
Well, I would respectfully disagree. I appreciate, Ann, what you have said. I think it's frustrating to move slowly. There is no question. And I have seen legislators leave because they can't get enough accomplished in a short period of time. However, I think we do some pretty radical things in this bill. Duplexing by right is a big deal.
The
5 units
underlying bill, I agree with you, and I supported the underlying
Right.
bill.
No, but
It's what we've done since then.
let me
that I'm
just
talking
finish if
about.
I may, which is, we're doing a lot of big things that are going to be tough on some towns, and towns are going to chafe at having to change their bylaws and all the work they have to do. We are also enabling a lot of low hanging fruit to go forward. We have poured over $400 million into new housing that is in the pipeline. We are making progress, and it is not overnight. We didn't get into this problem overnight, although the COVID really exacerbated it big time. But I agree with you, Ann, it is slow and frustrating work. But part of why Vermont looks like Vermont, it does. And part of why this is going to be a great state in 50 years is that we took the time to be thoughtful now. And I know it's slow, but we also in this bill are doing some big things. And I think we can't lose sight of some of the great stuff we're doing in this bill. And just even the low hanging fruit of home sharing and the VHIP and ADUs, that is helping bring more housing available to more people. Thank you. We need to get that amendment up to the woman right away.
Yeah.
both, well,
No, but you can
the, all of them.
That's me.
I need a clean copy. Do we have a clean copy?
I don't.
Scott,
I wrote on mine.
could we produce a clean copy? And I think
Do
it
you want to
needs,
need all that? all
The
the-
clean part is just the digital. Just digitally, it needs to be clean.
Um, so,
right. So thank you, everybody. And I think, in case you want to add something?
Well, I mean, first of all, I just want to say to every member of the committee, you know, thank you. And I know this has not been an easy process. You know, the chair of natural resources and I have exchanged some very strong words in this process. And I needed them to have a 3-2 vote at least on some of these changes that move them one step closer to us. And I appreciate the sacrifices made on this committee and all of the issues raised so that we could extend toward them. I see this as one of the, and I don't know, Senator Clarkson would agree, but it's been a long time since we've put this much of a stake in the ground that Act 250 is our jurisdiction as well. And I don't see that changing, but at the same time, we're going to have all the same players next year to work on this. And I want us to be in a place where we've, you know, really outlined where we're on the same page and where we need better information. And that's been my intention the whole time. And frankly, obviously now things got really complicated this week with being as intentional as I wanted to be around getting people circled up. But, you know, all of it is valuable and relevant. You know, Senator Brock, you have the audit that you want to do. We have not spent as much time on Act 250 as the other committee, and we have some work to do to get up to speed, to visit sites outside of session, to understand the need even better and be prepared to be that committee that shares jurisdiction fully and in an informed way with natural resources. And that's going to serve us well in the conference committee this year with the House and going forward. So I just really appreciate all of you. On a kind of logistical level, I would want to make sure we have a sense of who it makes sense to have report the amendment. I can do it, but you know, I think there's also just been a question about doing that from Zoom, and I'm happy to speak my piece or introduce the amendment myself. But as we write down the reporter of the amendment,
we will have that conversation.
Okay.
We have 25 minutes. So I think what you stop at the pro tem's office on the way, discuss who's, but
Okay,
we it still needs to be taken upstairs to Bloomer's office because they need to make copies.
I'll make sure.
okay, but I take it.
Yeah.
Okay,
And on the way, you have to stop at the pro tem's office
got it.
to,
All
you
right.
know what? Okay. What?
Should we deal with this and maybe postpone the conversation?
66.
I think that may be a good idea, given we only have 25 minutes. I would propose we do exactly that. Great idea. So I hate having just like 2 seconds ago giving you the nod.
That's
Let's
okay.
wait, and while we have energy and new bandwidth, why don't we address H66 paid family leave next week?
Sounds good.
Does that sound okay? Is that okay with you, Keisha?
it would be a tight timeline to consider, you know,
But
even to
we
get
have to
started
go.
with understanding. Yeah,
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Thank you, my dear.
thank you.
Keisha, thank you. I think we will, we'll text you and let you know what ends up.
Are we
the
adjourned?
decision on that. Is that okay?
Yes, and